Welcome back to the Batuta Advocate radio show, recording live here from Budgy Smuggler Studios in downtown Batuta. Now, this week's a bit different. We're actually going to be playing you a live recording from one of our book launches that took place around the country in December. We did a couple. We did Brisbane, Melbourne. We did a couple nights at the Opera House. So, you know, a lot of really easy to get to regional locations for our diehard readers. And we actually had a lot of fun. The host of this particular book launch that we're playing today is a lovely, unsinkable Brooke Boney from the Today Show. Been a great friend of the show and the newspaper for many years. And she must have done a pretty bloody good job because we sold out with that book. All prints are sold out, hoping to get a new batch in soon if you missed out. Mid-March, we're hoping for that. So if you did miss out, this should give you a good insight into what was in the book. And, of course, a bit of fun there with some Q&A at the end with some of the dribblers that came along to the Opera House. So sit back and enjoy the 2019 Batuta Advocate book launch for How Good's Australia. You're listening to Errol Parker and Clancy Errol, editors of the Batuta Advocate, on Desert Rock FM.
Wow, what a beautiful audience this is. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation tonight about this wonderful book. Can I just say, how good's Australia?
Pretty good, Brooke.
My name is Brooke Boney and I'm going to be hosting this wonderful conversation with these two men who I've admired for such a long time. We were cadets together, guys, isn't that right?
Briefly, Brooke.
Yeah. Tell us, share with the audience a little bit about your careers, guys.
Well, we actually met at the Childers House Fire. You were a young, up-and-coming journalist, and of course I was on sabbatical. I took a few. Batuta Advocate's a family-owned company, and I'm fourth, arguably fifth generation editor. And with that comes a lot of entitlement, and we've seen it in media dynasties in this country before, but I'd often have to get sent away. And that was that particular time. That's where I ran into you, Brooke.
And I was there to cover it for the London Evening Standard, I think. It was back then. It was a very big event for Central Queensland.
It was, yeah.
Sad event in the scheme of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, should we get stuck into it? Tell us a little bit about Batuta the town, because you've come a long bloody way for the show tonight, for this event.
We're based in the southwest corner of Queensland, about 2 hours from Birdsville, and our closest capital city is Adelaide. That doesn't give you a gauge on how far west it is. So we had to get a Rex to Adelaide, and then Adelaide's not a big city, so we got a Qantas link from there to Sydney. And we've been loving the place.
Well, that's good, because then you do get some of the points as well.
Yeah,
you see some of the familiar faces, some of your, your colleagues in the Qantas lounge.
We got to see Big Georgie there, back from Manila.
Yeah. Well, that's a rare sight.
Yeah.
You're very lucky to run into him there.
Yeah, I know.
What is it? It's 1 to 3.
I'm in the Virgin Lounge now because I got the boot from the Qantas Lounge because I brought a copy of The Guardian in there. They gave me the flick pretty quickly.
Yeah, I bet.
That said, no more Chairman's Lounge for you.
Straight out, no Chairman's
Bucko.
for you. Absolutely not.
Yep. And we know you're Catholic, so you can't come in there.
No cattle ticks allowed.
They could just absolutely sense it on you. Now, tell us a little bit about some of the stories that you've been running this year. You know, it's been a big bloody year for news, hasn't it?
Yes, there's been. There's been highs and lows in the news cycle this year. Obviously,
a lot of lows.
A lot of lows. A lot of highs as well. You know, this is the book, How Good's Australia. We thought we'd kind of. And it's inclusive of a few stories from the year, particularly the last 5 years. We thought we'd do a wrap of the decade, given it is 2019, which means next year it's a new decade. So we have summarised the last 5 years. We said a turbulent time in Australian history that we were lucky to get through. But we kind of, unlike a lot of the media out there, are looking at this country and this time with more of a positive view. We feel Australia's adapted pretty well to the 24-hour news cycle. We feel we're in a very lucky position where we got to elect ourselves, our own Prime Minister. And he's brought with him an amazing skill set and a really he's quite a leader. But not only that, is that he has some of the most amazing minds in this country in his cabinet. So that's the man, we believe, and those men are going to bring us to economic and environmental stability.
Well, of course, we did take the title of the book from the current Prime Minister, believe it or not. A lot of people have asked us, obviously you guys have got the sub-editor that you use at the newspaper is obviously the same one you've used for the book, because you've left the question mark off the title page. But, of course, when we ask that question, how good is Australia, it is a rhetorical question. But we hope that you'll be able to answer that once you get to the back of the book, after you buy it for $20 odd, after you gift wrap it for Scott from marketing, and then you buy a copy for yourself as well.
Yeah. Now, speaking of Scott Morrison and the election, I think one of the groups of people who I love the most in Betoota are the Quiet Australians. Whereabouts in Betoota do they live?
Well, the Quiet Australians...
We've got a map here somewhere, actually.
Yeah, somewhere.
It's on a tea towel.
Have we got a map?
There we go.
There it is.
Well, as you can see, down to the bottom left-hand corner, there is, of course, our own evangelical church, the Hillsong Church.
Yeah.
That, of course, is the Korean branch of Hillsong Church. Up until kind of the late 90s into the 2000s, that was just a big cow paddock.
Yeah.
There on the edge of town, which of course was owned by the mayor's wife. And if anyone here is from a medium-sized town, you'll know that the only land that gets developed in that town is land that has a direct link back to the mayor. And of course, that area of Betoota was developed quite heavily, and that cow paddock turned out to be worth a couple tens of millions of dollars. And now that particular political class of Betoota doesn't need to work. Yeah. They're good friends of yours, Clancy.
Yes, the Quiet Australians, the jet ski owners, and you'll notice for a town as big as ours, it's a fair way away from the race club. It's a fair way away from the Betoota Dolphins Oval and the Greek Club, and the mosque, of course, up there in Betoota Ponds, and the Housing Commission around there. But down here in
There'd
Betoota
be a couple
Heights,
of bonies up in the Housing Commission.
Yeah, a few bonies up there, I reckon.
Yeah, not many overalls though, are there?
No, mate. I'm down in Betoota Grove. That's where you'll find my family. I think you call it Wallara down here. That's where my family's from. Hence why I didn't even wear a suit. I don't need to impress anyone. But the Hillsong Church was built as part of the Betoota Heights, and it's a bit of an earner as far as churches go in our town. There's been a lot of money coming through there from Westpac, and it's done pretty well. A lot of beautiful houses too, and not the types that you'll find in Sydney that are going to break after 7 years. It's a lot of beautiful 3-bedroom rented brick McMansions with no aspect and a massive media centre, and Sky News on 24 hours a day.
And some very cold air conditioning too.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
always a must.
Yeah.
Crispy.
And cars with a bit of grunt.
Well,
No more Commodores, though. No more Commodores rolling off.
Only WRXs.
I noticed that there's no trees on that map. What's that all about? I mean...
Well, you see, that's an issue that you're having down here now in Sydney. And up in the Caliphate of Queensland under Sir Joe, he had the vision to let us tear all of our trees out. Especially when you live on the fringe of the Simpson Desert. Having less trees around is a good thing.
Yeah.
We don't have too many bushfires in Betoota, but we do have the odd one, and we do have one raging right now, don't we?
Yeah.
In the Simpson Desert State Forest.
Yeah, it's just behind the top of the map. You'll see Betoota Old New Art, our very flashy gallery. It was built by a local card counter. We call it Boner for short, but it's that's behind that, and that's the Arty precinct, the old city district. You got the Betoota Advocate newspaper. You got Roma Hills of the nightclubs, of course. You got the nightlife strip. And then you've got the big gallery, and behind that is the Simpson Desert State Forest. So I guess in this current climate, if the bushfire does reach town, it'll destroy the arts first, which is fine, because we've got plenty of roads. So that's...
Now, we were talking a little bit about the Housing Commission there. And as I mentioned, a lot of bonies. You know, one of the biggest stories to come out of the last couple of years, probably even the last couple of decades, I reckon, was Uncle Tony.
Mm-hmm. He had a similar story to yours, Brooke. He came out of the Housing Commission straight to the top. That was an interesting one, and I guess we can touch on it a bit more when we...
he was out of the Avalon mission.
Up there.
Rough area there.
This how he ended up in the role was... it's a long story, but when Malcolm Turnbull ousted Tony Abbott, he did it in such a way that this man could never come back from it, and it was with the folded square frame glasses and Julie Bishop by his side. And I think... And we say it's the equivalent of calling the kid at the bottle shop champ. He alphaed him by saying, just remember he's a person too, which I don't think, he's never really recovered from that. So he then moved to the backbench where he was throwing peanuts for quite some time and was eventually joined by Barnaby, and then eventually found an ally in the cabinet in the shape of Peter Dutton. And then when... Basically, the night of the long knives, when they came back to get Malcolm Turnbull, he didn't end up being Prime Minister, Dutton didn't end up being Prime Minister, Scott Morrison did. And Scott Morrison could see, and this is the skill he has that Turnbull didn't have, he needed to keep this man occupied. So he said, what's he good at? He's great with people, and he's great with his people. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So,
if there's one thing that we know about Tony Abbott, it is that he loves the community as much as they love him.
Absolutely.
Exactly the same amount.
And he's here tonight. Hey, Tony.
G'day, Tony.
If he was here, there'd be a red laser, I reckon.
Actually, are you?
Turnbull might be here, though. This is his people.
Yeah.
The Opera House audience.
Set.
But basically he cited, Tony Abbott's experience growing up in a 10-bedroom house in the North Shore of Sydney and spending 30 years in the Liberal Party put him in good stead to work as an advisor and consultant for remote Indigenous communities. So that was how the start of the ballad of Uncle Tony began.
What was the title that they gave him again?
He was the special envoy
Not just the envoy.
Indigenous affairs.
Yeah,
he wasn't the normal envoy. He was a very special one.
Yeah.
But it involved, a very complex journey for him because then he started to realise just how much his brothers on the street were actually suffering, didn't he?
Yeah, I know. And at first, the signs of him kind of re-immersing himself in that community, they were kind of a bit subtle at the start. He started supporting
the bucket hat.
Yeah, the bucket hat,
flag.
the tie. Started supporting the Rabbitohs.
And then, of course, some more nefarious things started to happen. He started to be pulled over for no reason, just as he was driving down the street to other things, Clancy.
Well, he started calling Peter Credlin sis. That was that was a surprising development.
And she loved that too, didn't she?
Yeah.
And then, of course, he was incarcerated quite a lot and went down to the Manly Aboriginal Medical Centre and realised he only has 8 more years to live statistically, so he thought he'd go out there and enjoy life. He went to a Rabbitohs match and then got arrested trying to hail a cab home. And while he was in prison, he read a book by a man named Malcolm X, which really, really changed his view.
He became quite political after that, didn't he?
Yeah.
Radicalised. Uncle Tony X was what he became. And he began wearing a bit of a beret and mobilising his community in Manly to march the streets to stop any police brutality that might be happening to his people up there in the northern beaches. And basically it all kind of... It was a great job for him. It kept him occupied until, of course, the racist voters decided to elect Zali Steggall at the election. So he then sacked himself because he was sick of being told what to do by the white man, which was him, I guess, in a way. It's all in the book.
There were a lot of stories this year. Can I get a look at the next slide, please? There we go. Politics.
Well,
Now, you did talk about the night of the long knives there. and about Scott Morrison.
Yeah, well...
You didn't talk about Engadine. We'll get to that.
Yeah, the Night of the Long Knives was an interesting one because basically Australia was forced to choose between two leaders, and Australia actually wasn't given any option. It was the elected officials in the Liberal Party were forced to choose. And basically we were looking at two options. We had a former highway cop from Queensland and an aristocratic Queen's English-speaking Vaucluse boy. And it was a tough decision. You know, we live in a land of extremes, and we were thankful, I guess, as a nation to find someone just in the middle, which was the husky evangelical from the Shire.
Yeah. Well, you know, it was kind of ironic because many moons ago, I think Peter Dutton was tied up with education, and obviously just if you're a teacher, in the past few weeks we've seen that we have slipped even further down the rankings of, you know, the smartest kids in the world, and as it turns out, Peter Dutton was denied the Prime Ministership simply because he couldn't add numbers together. So that defines irony to me.
Yeah. He really should have spent a bit more time in an education institution, maybe like the childcare centres.
If he would have known someone who could have. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about Shorten, because, you know, for a while there, everyone thought it was his to lose, didn't they?
Even Bill did.
Yeah. Even Bill did. As you can see in this photo, he's tied up with his mouth gagged by the CFMEU and Labor Party power brokers had left him in a room locked for a few months at least. But yeah, Bradbury Shorten, he began studying videotapes of that iconic gold medal, our first gold medal at the Winter Olympics.
Very good frosted tips.
Very
if I
good
do
frosted
say so.
tips.
Yeah.
And it was his for the taking, but...
yeah, well, I guess you could say that whole political race was kind of like the race where Stephen Bradbury won the gold, in that everyone fell over. And then the person who coasted to victory was the person who was coming first in the first place. You know? Yeah,
it was... and, you know, and like Bradbury, Scott Morrison will tell you that he thought it was going to happen that way. But... That's just Stephen Bradbury's story.
Well, there's an interesting story that came from the day after Scott Morrison won the election, and of course for the whole election campaign we had constantly referred to him as the Night Watchman. In the early hours after his election sort of victory, we got an email from the Prime Minister's office, and it said, "Who's the effing Night Watchman now, boys?"
There wasn't an official
that we were just
signature.
like, well, fair play, mate.
Yeah.
But look, if I can just interject though, because there was one story that threatened to bring the whole thing down for him, wasn't there?
Yeah.
It was the story of some McDonald's.
Yeah, I mean, there's a story that we've been legally required to no longer talk about.
Yeah, we have...
Well, look, I wouldn't want to get you into any legal trouble, but, you know...
Well, look, Brooke, in the work we do, it's kind of raw and unflinching, and we tell stories that a lot of people aren't prepared to tell, and a lot of people's lawyers aren't prepared for them to tell.
Yeah, we often haven't got time to really hassle our lawyers before we publish articles.
So basically what happened was in 1997, after the Super League Grand Final, the forgotten final between the Broncos and the Cronulla Sharks, Scott Morrison had an accident in Engadine Macca's on the way home.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Like spilled the sauce or something? Or?
Yeah, something like that. The McFlurry, maybe. And that was anyway, we've been sent a big letter, so we probably shouldn't talk about that. But
no.
Okay.
I guess I could just filled you all in on what.
Well, you know, as the editor of a newspaper, the last thing you want to see come into your mailbox is an envelope that's, you know, this thick, and it comes from a law firm in Engadine.
Yeah.
Ironically, you know, as we thought, you know, this
with ties to the Hillsong
This
Church.
could only mean one thing, and that's that it's true. But
no one's
really
going Facebook Live, are they?
No, it's a closed room.
Good stuff.
Chatham House rules, thank you, guys. All right, there were a lot of stories though this year. Let's have a look at the next slide.
Well, this, of course, is in reference to the modern-day gladiators, which I guess sitting here in the Opera House studio I imagine a lot of people here on the Opera House mailing list. So I also imagine a lot of you people don't watch rugby league.
Well, they'd all be Sydney Swans supporters.
Yeah,
they look like a crowd who knows what's up. You know, I used to follow rugby league and
yeah,
you
were the Bonies from Muswellbrook, big league family, Newcastle Knights pedigree. But of course, you made a bit of money and now you support the Swans. So
big money bones.
Big money bones. Yeah. So basically, there's two types of football in this country. In Muswellbrook, you probably skipped the middle one. You went from Muswellbrook supporting the Knights to this and so supporting the Swans.
I don't really know anything about Union.
Yeah, well, the main difference between rugby league and rugby union is...
They were both ruined by Kerry Packer.
Yes, that's one. Rugby union, the fans wear patches on their elbows.
Yeah.
And in rugby league, the fans wear spider web tattoos on their elbows. So that's the main difference. But, you know, as...
Obviously, there's other ones like which postcode you were born in. That's obviously a big...
Yeah.
That's a big indicator of what sporting code you tend to go for. And, of course, you have a tendency to add the G's onto the end of your G words, and I guess that's indicative of a Reds or a Waratahs membership.
Yeah.
Or
in fact, if you went to one of the 4 private schools in this country that still play it, you might have grown up supporting rugby union. But rugby league has risen to the top, and it's become an explosive event. And we've all heard the kind of terminology they use during Origin. Mate versus mate, state versus state. Not since the days of gladiatorial combat have we seen a competition so fierce.
You sound like Gus Gould. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Gus Gould, he goes and he'll give a 20-minute sermon, and they know the pyrotechnics. It's a bit more WWE, if anything. You know what I mean? That's kind of in this country where we have such a celebrity deficit, where we, you know, ever since Leighton and Beck bought that house. It was basically a compound, so the cameras couldn't get in. We haven't had any celebrities.
It's gotten to the point that there isn't enough sort of famous people in this country that, you know, the bedtime affairs of the leader of the National Party became front page news.
Yeah.
You know, that was a bit of a...
Yeah, the fact that we know...
Albeit gross story, but... Yeah.
Barnaby's mistress's name is a testament to the celebrity deficit we have. And the Married at First Sight... They're only around for 18 months. They don't stick around in the news cycles. So I guess as a nation, we've leaned into the Dylan Nappers and the Kalen Pongas and the Andrew Fafitas of the world. They've explosive, red-hot Instagram presence.
Well, they're stars on the field and off the field, aren't they? You know?
And the most dangerous thing now with our Necklace Noble Savages is that they've realised they don't need to necessarily play football to make a quid. Because if you've got about 180k on the gram, you know, you can rep a few T-shirts.
Well, the other thing is you see all these videos of them getting around. You don't even need to see them playing on the field.
I know. We know what they're up to.
We know what they're up to.
They're going live on Instagram over, you know, plate of cocaine. They're doing all kinds of stuff. And particularly last year's off-season, this year was the first time someone born this millennium played Origin. So someone who's born 2000, David Fafita for the Maroons. So now we have a generation of kids who've grown up with Instagram and Facebook. So it's even more exciting how little interpersonal skills they have. And it's all over social media, and it's everywhere. And last year's off-season was almost schizophrenic, I have to say. And we really, you know, it was a big time for us. It was a big news cycle. It usually goes a bit sleepy around December, January, but not for us.
Oh, well, it's just about to gear up for you then.
Yeah, absolutely.
No rest for the wicked, as they say.
We just ran a story then about the NRL had actually sent an email right around to all players and coaches and said, this city's so smoky, no one can see you. Get down to Bondi now. Do it. Get it out of your system. Just get it in. Squeeze a few out. Squeeze a few benders out.
I don't know, but still, I don't know why they just don't... For the off-season, the NRL just hires out an entire apartment block in Melbourne where every NRL player is completely anonymous.
Well, they tried that in Bali and they ended up punching blokes off scooters and they'll get recognised, I guess. As
Well, in Melbourne, they'll probably get punched back.
And you can't pay your way out of that one. So.
No, you can't. Well, this is where we turn the stories back onto you guys, because we're going to fill you in and we'll tell you some of the stories that didn't quite make the deadline for the book, because it has been such a busy news time. But we also want some of you to ask some questions. So if you've got some, please, you can tweet them. We're also going to place a couple of microphones on either side of the auditorium here.
That's just a red hot decision to make by the Opera House.
And
just really consider your choices here. Really have a long, hard think about it.
For the love of God, this is a family show.
Yeah.
Because
have some respect, show some decorum.
The last time we did this, there were a couple of C-bombs. And it's very disappointing.
None of that, thank you. None of that.
Very disappointing.
Are there any kids in here? Okay.
All right, very good. Responsible parenting. All right, let's take
us
a
anything
break.
there.
And we'll be back. Can I get a round of applause for Clancy and Errol, please?
Hello, we're back.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Came back. How lovely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, you guys, the Batuta Advocate is such an incredible publication, one with a long and noble tradition. And I want to get to the stories that missed the deadline for the book. But just tell this audience about how incredible the legacy is that you've inherited.
Well, Batuta initially started as a customs port in between South Australia and... Sorry for this mob up here, I've been swivelling a bit. Between South Australia, New South Wales and Queensland, it was actually quite a busy town back in the day. They had a police station, they had 5 pubs, and that kind of grew and grew from there. My family have always been out there. They came out with the opals back during the opal rush with the French who came through, French Polynesia, they came through, and my family were... they weren't actually French, but they did come out at that time and they moved into the French Quarter. So culturally, they were French in a way. And we've found opals recently again. There's been like a second opal boom, but we've decided to keep it to ourselves this time in Batuta just to keep the vagrants out of town. And you know,
and I think we've done such a good job that the government thinks no one lives there.
Yeah. Because, you know, a lot of people like to live... A lot of people who live in Batuta don't, like, have much time for the census or the tax office or the electoral rolls. So we try and keep it that way. But opals, if people to find out about opals, we'd found a new vein of opals out there, we would get a lot more people like that coming out. So we've got to kind of, you know...
Forget about Adani. They'd be out there for the opals.
I know. We've got to get a little bit domestically xenophobic, I suppose, about the type of people that move. But my family's been there for generations. I said 4th, arguably 5th editor of the Batuta Advocate, and it was a job kind of promised to me since birth. Like all good media professionals, I was told from a young age that you'll have this editor position no matter what, and so I decided to have a bit of fun with it, and I took a bit of time travelling around. I played a bit of professional rugby league for the Batuta Dolphins. And, my career was looking good. I could have gone to Redcliffe. You know, I reckon I could have gone down to St George, but I had a disgusting tib and fib compound fracture against the Cunnamulla Rams in 1976. So that was a 1976 grand final, and we lost it on the buzzer, and my leg was flapping. So I...
Well, you never mess with the Cunnamulla fella, as they say.
Cunnamulla fella. They'll definitely pull a late hit on you. And I, from there, I kind of went back and moseyed around and then took up the Charleville correspondent for a little while. There was a bustling bureau we had out there at the time, and it was one of those times I mentioned earlier when my old man sent me away because I was playing up, getting into the Bob Hope. So he sent me over there, and I was working there for a while, and it was there. That was where I met Fred Brophy, who runs the boxing tents. So I kind of travelled around the country with him for about 10 years, took another sabbatical with them, and I was a tent boxer for a time. Dancing Clancy, they used to call me, and that was life, you know what I mean? And it was great fun. I changed companies a few times, went from Fred Brophy to Jimmy Sharman, back to Fred Brophy. Just, you know, there weren't any unions in that day and age. So basically, after spending 10 years on the road, getting punched in the head and knocked out, and I developed a crippling alcohol addiction. I was prepared at that time in my life to become a political staffer with the National Party, and I ran the Joe for PM campaign back in Brisbane. And then, basically, from that point, I had to get out of town quickly. My house was raided as a part of what we now know as the left-wing sensationalist witch hunt. Was the Fitzgerald inquiry at the time. I had to get out of Brisbane. So I did. Went back to Batuta, got given the editor role. That's about the size of it.
Well, there you go. He's out of peanut country and he's out of Brisbane, straight out to Batuta.
I don't know how that hasn't got his own Australian story yet, but of course it's in the it's in the pipe. Well, my
Fiddler won't. Richard Fiddler won't answer my calls. By the way.
well, I guess that my story is a bit different. Born in Hong Kong to a homely Cathay Pacific stewardess and a Namibian arms dealer. You know, very, very common union.
Classic story.
In Hong Kong back in those days. You know, back before, you know, we bit the bullet and stood up to China, but that's, you know, that's for a different time, different place, when the spies aren't here. Yeah. But anyway, long story short, we went to journalism school, got moved over to the South China Sea Daily in Guangzhou, did that. I did the handover. I met a journalist there. He said, you'd be a good fit in London. Went over to London. Started at the bottom, got to the top, got done hacking phones. Next door. It's not funny. Look, I'm working in the desert now. You know, I was on Fleet Street. I had a Jaguar. I was living in Belgravia. Of course, anyone who's ever been to London knows that that's, you know, a very up-and-coming neighbourhood. I landed back in Australia, broke, destitute on my brother's passport. After spending some time in the southern Atlantic territory, the Falkland Islands, was a lighthouse keeper on West Falkland.
Nice spot.
That's the rough Falkland.
It's about the size of it. He landed back in Batuta. It was Anzac Day.
And, it was Anzac Day. Landed back in Batuta. Looked in the back of the Courier Mail. A cash job for an editor. I said, you know, that's got me written all over it. Got the train up to Charleville, wasn't it? And I met you on Anzac Day in Fred Brophy's boxing tent in 2013. Mm-hmm. And I guess the rest, as they say, is history. Now, here I am, wasting my time in Sydney with you.
But you've wasted your time doing so many memorable stories, mate. One of my absolute favourites that's just not... it didn't get in time for the book, for the print run, was about Barnaby Joyce, the deputy who never was.
You guys know who he is, don't you?
Yeah.
Down here in Sydney?
Yeah, the Povo Barnaby, I guess you're talking about there.
Povo Barnaby.
Barnaby realised he was a bit skint. I guess that's what happens when you have a Catholic amount of kids with two wives on such a small salary. He ended up in a tough position. We wrote about it. Well, the first story that broke for us was he started having to wear his older cousin's hand-me-down Wu-Tang jumpers and that kind of stuff when he was getting around Tamworth. Of course, he was spotted at the 7-Eleven just near Parliament House buying a $1 coffee on Afterpay, which is, I guess, that's pretty grim. When you're doing 4 fortnightly payments of 25 cents, things are...
Yeah. It's difficult because when it gets refused, you get a $5 charge. So the coffee ends up being, it's a $20 coffee.
And that's for...
That'd just about do him in.
It would, yeah.
I reckon. Of course, there was a story of him when he was always first one at the crack of dawn at the Armadale Return and Earn, where he'd be going around the bins up there in the New England. He was out the back of the White Bull, getting all the cans out of the yellow bin into his own bag and then straight into the Return and Earn, and then obviously back buying the essential cartons of Crown Lager.
Yeah. When you know you're in the money, you're on the Crownies.
How many trips do you reckon it takes to Woolies to get one of those rare Ushies? Because that's what he ended up stumbling across. That's bloody lucky, isn't it? It's a good...
That's what he descended to, Brooke. He had to sell a very rare Ushi on Facebook Marketplace.
It was a blue one, in case any of you guys are Ooshie people.
Yeah.
In the rare chance that Ooshie people and the Opera House overlap.
If you're...
They look like the sort of crowd who'd collect them for their friends' kids in the country.
They look like they're interested in zero-use plastic items.
More into the plants that Woolies has now.
The Coles. Yeah, no, he that's what he descended to. He's on Facebook a lot with a shared Facebook account, Barnaby and Vicky. And anyone driving to Canberra tomorrow would like a lift, we'll provide music. Leg of sheep that I slaughtered myself because I'm so povo. But that was basically the yarn we got to with Barnaby Joyce. Didn't make the book because that was a new revelation this year.
It was a very tough spot that he found himself in, but he wasn't the only man who found himself in a tough position this year. The other one was, of course, Cardinal Pell.
Yeah.
Well, you know, see, this was a bit of an open, like everyone knew this was happening in the media because, of course, when the judgment was first handed down some time ago, there was a bit of an overlap where the media was able to report on it for about 7 minutes, and then the judge put a gag order on it, just went bang, and anyone who reported anything on Cardinal Pell would have been slapped with a contempt of court. And
The only way you could have found out is if you knew someone who'd been privy to the court case, or you went to www.washingtonpost.com.
So anyway, we did write a...
That's weird that it doesn't have a .au on the end, isn't it?
Weird.
Oh, gosh.
Well, we did write a spate of stories about Cardinal Pell once the court order was lifted. Of course, the first one that we wrote was a bit, R-rated.
Yeah.
Basically calling him a C word and enjoying him on his way to prison, which, of course, struck a chord with, the people on Facebook.
Yeah. The loud Australians had an issue with that.
Yeah.
The ones that clap a lot had an issue with that. And then, of course, Tony Abbott, before his time was done in Parliament, obviously really read the room and decided to come out and publicly support Cardinal Pell despite being convicted and charged. The first thing that Tony Abbott did was he went to visit Pauline Hanson to see if she had any neo-Nazi contacts inside prison that might be able to protect Cardinal Pell. As I'm sure everyone's aware, historic rock spiders don't fare too well in jail. So he did that, and things, and from there things have just kind of gotten worse and worse for the old man. But he's still got a few allies. Tony visited him last week, apparently.
If it wasn't for this annoying court case to come between Cardinal Pell and Tony, he could have a knighthood by now.
Absolutely. And if it wasn't for that intern in our office who had done a couple of law subjects at UQ, the Batuta Advocate might not exist. If we'd if we'd chosen to ignore that gag order, that might have been the end of us. There would have been no book, and
well,
there would have been a glisten in your eye.
Back to Hong Kong for you, mate. See you later.
Well, I've only got my Namibian passport left, so I guess I'd be going back to speaking either German or Pidgin. So, both of which I'm not that fluent in anymore. But anyway, but that wasn't the first time, Clancy. We had we had an intern come up to do an internship from UQ, I think it was. She came up in the winter of 2014 and she said, "You guys haven't got a Facebook page for your newspaper. You haven't got an Instagram page either or a Twitter page. What are you doing?" And we went back to her and said, social media is a fad. We are old hands of the industry. We know how to turn a buck in newspapers.
We'll just have to do more with less, love. We'll do more with less. It'll be fine. You'll remain unpaid, and if you speak out of school like that again, you'll be back on a bus to Brisbane. It's basically what we said.
And arguably her decision to take us onto social media really destroyed our lives because we've gone from being largely anonymous newspaper men, as most people who work in newspapers are, to being people launching books at the Opera House. It's a real sick life.
We did listen to her in the end. We thought, because she stuck to her word, we threatened to sack her because she was being out of line, trying to tell us how to do our jobs, how to run a newspaper, you know what I mean?
Yeah, upstart.
Like my grandfather ran it that way, you know what I mean? And I knew social media. I mean, yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, it was a trend. I didn't think it was going to take off. But eventually, she just stuck to her word. And she was showing us all these funny memes and stuff like that. We hadn't seen anything like that before.
How do you say it? Meme?
Memes.
Oh.
Memes.
Meme.
Are you sure?
That's how they say it in France.
Yeah.
So
Memes.
Are you...
yeah, well.
So we kind of thought we'd get on board. We got on board, and we made the decision to listen to a millennial. We haven't necessarily regretted it.
Well, do you know who else spends a lot of time on Facebook and the like is anti-vaxxers?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And you guys have done a couple of spicy stories about anti-vaxxers.
Anyone here followed Tay's way? Anyone?
All right, thank Christ. All right,
No,
so basically, that's really the only partisan angle that we take as a newspaper is that we just, we don't like to hear the other side's story that say, if you vaccinate, your child is going to become magnetic or whatever the fuck they're on about. But, we have a long and esteemed history of being in the pro-vaccination camp, and I don't think that's really something that we should be shying away from.
Nurses, hell yeah.
As the parent of 5 kids under 4, I just have to say that there have been times where I've wondered if vaccinating them was the right decision. There have been times, I put my hand up, I've been weak at times, but
Your kids need to be vaccinated with Ritalin.
Now that they're all on their way to be, fledgling members of society with, at least one DUI, I'm glad that I vaccinated all those bastards.
But yeah, we've written a few about them. There was one, the vaccination movement. We've got a town not far from Batuta, which is very similar to your Mullumbimbies and your Mossmans, where people don't really subscribe. Yeah. It's called Linnaoonsie. It's a town near us.
Yeah, that one.
There's a big movement there, and there's a lot of pseudoscience online, and it's actually gone to new levels. We started hearing about, melanoma's a myth, sunscreen's a myth. We started hearing baby seats were actually a conspiracy by Big Pharma to injure your children. And,
then, at the start of this year, we were told that we weren't going to get the NBN, that there's too much cloud cover in the Diamantina and the Sky Muster can't get down.
Yeah.
So they were like, we'll give you the next best thing, we'll give you this thing called 5G, and they immediately hated it. They were like, nah, not. We are happy with our GSM network, but we still want to watch The Crown every night.
Yeah.
And,
5G's the new vaccinations, I guess, in that part of the world. But, to be honest, we should have never given those people the internet because that's what happens.
And that's on David Littleproud, our local member. He has let this hell take over our regional community there on the fringe of the Simpson Desert.
There was another one, Magnolia was her name. She's a local woman.
Influencer?
Magnolia Smithers, influenza.
Oh.
And her husband, Banjo Clementi, who's a microbrewer, and they've actually taken it as far as calling out the surf life savers. They don't believe that they should listen to this archaic, dystopian, Orwellian... What's the other one they love saying? Draconian...
Yeah.
red and yellow flags. They don't like the red and yellow flags either.
Darwinian,
don't
they?
They don't like the red and yellow flags, and they've been trying to boycott them ever since. It's all tied into that anti-vaxxer movement. So, at their own risk, I guess.
Yeah, a lot of links they're making there, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Now, speaking of the internet, we have a few questions from the internet before we open it up to you guys. Let's go to our first one. This one is from Gavansh Bhatia. Have the Murdochs come knocking yet? What is the figure to sell out, boys?
Well, the Murdochs came to us about the same time that Channel 9 came to Fairfax, and they said, Fairfax is worth 300, and you've got more reach than Fairfax, you've got less overheads than Fairfax, you hire less inner city lefties than Fairfax do, you cater for a wider audience than Fairfax does, and as I understand, the Sydney Morning Herald was more or less, they were talking about a Sydney that didn't extend further than the Anzac Bridge.
It gets a bit uncomfortable past
and they
the fish
said
markets,
to us, we spoke to James and Lockie and
Jim.
And they said, all right, boys, what's your price? And we said, 600, and they said, oh, interest rates are low.
Yeah.
There's never been a better time to buy.
Well, then, of course, we watched Succession. We got really nervous about making that decision.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because as an employee, I'm not an equity shareholder like Clancy is. So, of course, I was the one who was going to get fucked here. So,
You're living deadline to deadline, really.
So basically, it was up to Clancy and his estranged brother Clyde. He
lives in Byron.
He is living in Byron, and he's doing the same thing that every other private schoolboy who's got a rich dad does when they've got nothing else to do and they develop an app. He's on his 4th app at the moment. So it's up to Clancy and Clyde and his old man to really make that decision. So
And
it was about 500 to answer the question.
Yeah, it was about that much. So, and I wasn't
So if you are
interested.
listening, guys, that's
500,000, that is.
Yeah.
So
that's the
the
price.
size of a carport.
I've always hated Foxtel, and I don't really like the bias shown towards Queensland during State of Origin. So I told them to get fucked. So I'm not interested in the Packers. Anyway, they have come knocking, and I've said no.
And that's why we're flying home on Tiger.
All right, next question. Lisa Jane. Has Barnaby tapped into the neighbours' Foxtel yet? Speaking of Foxtel, Super Simpsons Saturday.
And
What a
speaking
time.
of Barnaby living a little more thrifty, not sure. Could have easily done in.
He could have. It's much easier to tap into Foxtel than it is to tap into Austar. But there's only one dish. But if there's anyone who can find out how to do that, it's Barnaby Joyce.
The best one would be, because I know
Smart
he's
fella.
living above a pub now in Armidale, would be to
He did.
tap into the pub Foxtel so you get to watch the mundane matches as well.
Well, you just need to
pay-per-view.
borrow the card, don't you?
Yeah.
Just put it in the one that you've got at
Just
home.
Drill a hole to the wall, run a cable through it. People do it.
So the
Easy
answer
as pie.
to that is yes. Of course he has. Of
There you
course
go,
he has.
Lisa. There's your answer. Next question. Chris, look, there are a lot of boomers in the audience tonight. Why do you think they keep coming back for more punishment?
Because they've never been punished in their life. Been given one handout after the next.
It's it must be a bit of a sadistic thing, because when you...
Vietnam. Well,
it's like...
well, you're still here, aren't you? Jesus Christ.
No, the boomers were probably a bit young for Vietnam, a bit too old for the 3 wars they sent younger people to, and kind of just old enough to get a free education, just young enough to buy a house for 80 grand in Balmain.
Yes,
So
but
I guess-
still old enough to be like, oh no, all of my Ansett points are gone.
Yeah.
You know?
That was their Vietnam. The collapse of Ansett was their Vietnam. So yeah, I guess they like this sensation of feeling uncomfortable and like they're treading water, like, a good 80% of the country that live beneath them do. So
All right, next question. Domingo at Plunder Monkey 1. Is there another Plunder Monkey that you needed to add a 1 to that, Domingo? If not now, when can we talk about the role of climate change in the fires ravaging the Diamantina Shire, and what comfort are residents taking in Warner's return to form?
It's not a return to form. On that pitch, even I'd say that Mr. Bean could have scored fucking 400 on that pitch. It was a section of the highway out there that, just when the Australians decided to declare, crumbled very nicely.
yeah.
So
I mean, but they are taking comfort in it.
They
It's about
are.
all you got.
I think it's a bit of a conspiracy, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, and ask anyone north of the Tweed that decaying, kind of disintegrating moral fibre was definitely due to in the Queensland cricket side, was definitely due to a southern-centric selection kind of favouritism for a while there, and you wouldn't get that with Roy, you wouldn't get that with Johnson. So, yeah, I guess they're taking comfort in Warner's return to form. He's the closest thing you'll get to a Queenslander in that side. And the Diamantina Shire, as we said, we've cleared all the trees.
I think that's a bit of hyperbole in that, Well, there are a couple of bushfires currently raging in the Diamantina Shire, but of course they're raging in the botanical gardens. We've already lost our boab tree. We've lost a couple of cacti. We've lost our jacaranda. We've even lost the most northern Moreton Bay fig in the country as well. So it's a travesty. And of course, Scott Morrison's going to play a big role in getting our community back on its feet, and I think that that David Warner too's got some big shoes to fill. I think that he needs to score 600 in this next test. Otherwise, the people of the Diamantina Shire are going to collapse in on themselves.
Society, just in general, I think. All right, next question. Gemma Ferguson, do you have any advice for a recent uni graduate who majored in journalism? How can I make my mark on the industry as well as you have?
By swapping the law now and persecuting us, I reckon. We could be your spy catcher.
Yeah.
You could.
Oh, you could learn how to pull a beer for a little bit. I guess you're going to make a name for yourself as a whistleblower. That's the quickest way to the top in journalism nowadays. Other than that, do as much as you can with less, and settle for a job that basically every day you feel like you're betraying the values you were raised with. And basically forget about science and
it's also very important to know that it's a slow build. It's not going to happen overnight. You've got to keep chipping away at the coalface. You've got to be there when the days are tough, and you've got to be there when the days are good. Obviously, those ones are better than when the days are bad. But it's about being determined in your own mission to get where you want to go, and to have this doggone desire to be the last one left when the music stops.
Yeah, wow, musical chairs. There's quite a lot of wisdom in there, Errol. You could also be the token anti-feminist female for Sky News. They'll give you a job at 19 for that if you want to jump on a panel with Andrew Bolt. That's a quick way.
Probably get a column out of that or something as well, I reckon.
Yeah.
With attitudes like that, Clancy, Lord knows we know that you've inherited a newspaper.
We give them what they want, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, next question. Misty McPhail, which I feel like is definitely a made-up name. In the great tradition of Australian media dynasties, of which country are you planning to politically lobotomise and take control?
Well, we've been
very loaded, Misty. Geez.
Yeah, we do have an answer for you. We've been building bureaus around the country. Sydney's we're working on. Melbourne we can't quite crack. Brisbane, Charleville, and then Darwin, Broome, and pushing the boat out a bit further from there, Norfolk Island,
Port Moresby,
Istanbul, a couple others, Buffalo, New York.
Lahore.
Yeah. In terms of what countries we're looking to politically lobotomise and take control of,
I'd say Victoria.
Victoria would be a good one.
If there's any people on this earth that need saving, they're Victorians, I swear to Christ.
That's an easy bet. Yeah, and we're heading down there for a show. And, we're doing that on Saturday. The interesting thing about Victoria is they're quite European, and which is
they
great.
They like to think.
It's the Paris of the South, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. And they like to act like, it's a unique Victorian culture. But really, when Brexit happens and then Wales takes off and Scotland takes off, at the end of the day, it'll be Victoria and Windsor, and they'll follow the Queen till the end. And we said this last time we were down there on the live tour. We said it's so European, and they kind of like that. And we said, it's the Victorian architecture. The sun sets at 9 p.m. and you're all terrified of African teenagers. It's very a European city in that sense. Yeah. And it's no surprise that tickets haven't been selling well for Saturday night. The Alex Theatre in St Kilda, if you're interested to follow us around the country.
All right, next question. Well, this is where we open it up to you guys for a couple of goes. Like I said, no C-bombs. Please don't disrespect us like that.
There's a lady couple of microphones.
There's a microphone over here. There's a microphone over there.
Yeah.
We'll take a couple from... Oh, you are so keen. You are either a journalist from the Daily Mail
or you're about to launch a new Apple product.
Yeah. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
With the wonderful things that you're seeing from New South Wales Police at the moment and us cruising rapidly along the democracy tables, how hopeful are you that we're going to see a much higher level of strip searching across all the states of our great land? And are you eagerly looking forward to seeing all news outlets rapidly raided? How far do you hoping this all gets?
Well, it won't get to us because we're in the Simpson Desert. I guess that's what's protected us.
There's only one cop and he's in Birdsville.
Yeah.
So, but it's important that you all know your rights.
Yeah.
You know, do not talk to the police unless you have a lawyer present.
Yeah.
You don't need... They aren't your mates. Don't let them fucking honey dick you. Just don't let them piss in your pocket. They aren't your mates. They're out to get you.
Yeah.
As soon as they walk over, it's cat and mouse.
In this state,
do or die.
Anyway, we look forward to seeing Angus Taylor getting strip searched.
Yes, but to answer your question, I would say that yes, that I think that we should be reporting more on what the New South Wales cops are doing, but I don't think it's going to spread to other states because at least in other states they have a sense of decorum, where in this state that fucking God forgot, you know, they let anything happen here. Yeah. Strip searching, bloody rugby union.
Yeah.
But all this goes
Next
on.
question,
Yeah,
please.
next question is a bit heated.
G'day. As the media moguls you are, you have amassed a following that can collectively bring positive change to our country.
Yeah.
How would you like to see your work influence your audience to become better Australians?
We'd like them to really ask questions. We'd like them to...
I spent like 5 hours writing that one.
Yeah, it's all good. Sorry, mate. We'd like... And I wasn't talking about you necessarily. We'd like them to ask questions. Yeah. It's question things, you know? I mean, I think the CSIRO have an agenda, so I think NASA do too. I think, you know, as it was published in The Australian about a week ago, if there really was that many carbon emissions, everything would be black, okay? So...
Yeah, well, like...
Yeah, it'd be washing up in the water.
Yeah,
right? We'd be breathing it in.
Yeah.
Duh.
Well,
there'd be bushfire smoke everywhere.
Yeah.
We do have an audience that skews quite young, so we like to think that we give them tools to make their own decisions. You know, in terms of the news, where, you know, if you're 25 and you're voting for the Libs, you know, maybe you might need a CAT scan on your head. Or if you're bloody 45 years old with a big mortgage and a job that's in mining, you'd have the same CAT scan if you voted for the Greens. You know, because they aren't going to save your job, are they? You know, so, but we like to give people the tools to come up with their own conclusions, make their own choices.
But yes,
and ask questions.
In our position, we are able to decide who starts wars and who wins them. You're right. And I guess that's just our little plaything for now. I don't know. We'll see how we go. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're all puppets. It's so funny. Just kidding. Over here, next question, please.
Just about Israel Folau. Is he another example of why league and union should never mix?
Well, what we were saying earlier, that's a good question.
You hang out at Hillsong.
Israel who?
Yeah, and I was also wondering when the money runs out, will he, maybe Brooke knows, will he be coming to Channel 9 and doing a current affair interview for money?
Do you know what? I reckon he's more likely to get into politics.
Yeah.
That's my hot tip.
Yeah, the member for the Hills. I don't know. The thing is, with Israel Folau, we were saying before, we talked about the boomers, and a lot of them went to the University of Life and the School of Hard Knocks, which is, you know, they tend to agree with what Israel has to say, and they tend to agree with his right to say it. But of course, Israel went to the School of Head Knocks, and this is why he's saying whatever
and
comes
he came
to his
out
mind.
the other side clean.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
That's it. That's a wrap.
it.
Oh,
All right,
no,
over
we'll
here.
watch it.
Oh, sorry. Quick question. So, big fans of yourselves, but you guys are also big fans of R.M. Williams.
Yeah.
So, two-part question. Number one, what's going to happen with R.M. Williams now that potentially going offshore? And second part is, do you think Scotty from marketing should start wearing the RMs and maybe that might drum up a bit more business?
Well, just to clear things up, these are Baxters because these are owned by an Australian family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're made here. where, you know, I don't want my money going over to Louis Vuitton. I don't want to pay $600 for boots that are made by some bloke who's barely able to feed himself in Adelaide.
Yeah.
So as far as I'm concerned, I don't want to look like some young lib. I reject that question. And for as long as I live, I will wear the boots of the person the highest bidder. Next question.
Here we go, over here. We've got one more over here.
Okay. Friendy ScoMo, what's up?
Well, it's got to... I'm just about to ask about your friend ScoMo then anyway, so there you go. So I want to know what your what you think about the relationship between ScoMo and Hillsong's Houston is, and because you're so good on the predictions, when is it going to fucking rain?
Well, obviously when we stop...
Or have you asked, or are you part of the Hillsong and ScoMo praying club?
Well, ScoMo, funnily enough, distanced himself from Hillsong, joined a new one, which was a small chapter called Horizon Church in the Shire, which was about 3 months, pretty well timed before the Royal Commission into institutional responses to certain things. So the church he's in is pretty clean, but the relationship still stands with Brian Houston. So I don't know, when's it going to rain?
I'd say...
When we stop sinning.
Yeah. But...
Or maybe you need to get Tony involved then.
Well, you know, just as a more realistic answer, this back down on Earth. As for when it's going to rain, you see that there are a number of external influences thousands of kilometres away which dictate when it's going to rain on this continent. Of course, the Southern Ocean Oscillation Index is currently turning the wrong way, so most of that rain is ending up in Africa. I'm not finished, and then of course there's one in the Indian Ocean too, which is turning the opposite way too. And of course, coupled with El Nino, there are the three ocean currents that dictate when it's going to rain in this country are all working against us. So
clearly you're not spending enough time down with ScoMo in Canberra then, because it's obviously all about praying.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, we should
it's
pop the
about
bubble.
science.
And you know what? Trump said it's time to drain the swamp. I think we should poison the trough down there in the bubble. But again, it's science and it's religion, and they work together sometimes.
I reckon we'll go one more question,
music.
and then I want to hear what your predictions are, because that was such a beautiful prediction about when it might rain. I'd like to hear what your predictions are for 2020. Over to you.
My question is more for you, Brooke. As a Wiradjuri woman, I was quite surprised when Uncle Tones decided to identify. I wanted to know what your response was, and is he in the same tribe as Jacinta Price?
I'm buying out of this one, girls.
Moi picante. Why you just throw the spiciest one to me at the wrong end of the day? You know, I've been up since 3:30 this morning. I think I was just as shocked as anybody else when Uncle Tony decided to start identifying. And like I said to you guys before, I think that Uncle Tony loves Mob just as much as Mob love Uncle Tony.
Correct.
Beautiful relationship there. Now, boys, don't waste your claps now, because we will come to that in a minute. What are your predictions for 2020? Because you've been quite successful in predicting the biggest stories, the biggest news stories of the year in the past. What are you thinking in terms of local politics and in terms of stuff abroad?
Well, American election, Trump's got a second term.
Yeah, I think Trump's going to get back in, and then immediately he's going to have his top cleared, like...
Don't clap at that. We'll get so much shit if you clap at that.
Clap all you want.
Please don't clap.
President Pence. Yeah.
He could get his top cleared, JFK style, but he'll probably get a second
Classic
term.
nearsightedness of bloody inner city people. Christ.
In terms of Australian politics, I'm going to say someone to keep an eye out, a real up-and-comer, Angus Taylor. I reckon he's got...
He probably won't get shot.
Yeah, he probably won't get shot.
Good Oxford boy.
Yeah, he's a good Oxford boy. He's got it made. He'll be an interesting... He'll be a force to be reckoned with.
And in terms of the
player.
environment, really, I think that's what is most important here. I think it's fucked.
Environment. What?
Yeah.
Okay, that's really weird. I can't believe you just said that.
Well,
I don't know what would give you that indication.
The environment's going to be here no matter who the Prime Minister is, no matter who the President is, but, you know, it's it's fucked already, so we might as well just burn everything.
One thing
Everyone
I would
get a
say
Land
in the
Rover.
meanwhile is
There you go.
we've got the right Prime Minister, as you'll find in this book that we stopped talking about 45 minutes ago. We've got the right man on the job. As we said, he's halfway between Dutton, he's halfway between Turnbull. He's an amazing mind, he's an amazing leader. He's got some amazing brains with him in cabinet. He's got people like Angus Taylor and that guy from Education and Maurice Payne, who replaced Julie Bishop, just some of the smartest public servants we have in this country, and they're going to lead us to economic and environmental stability. And this time next year you'll say, if you're not convinced yet, how good's Australia? But we should wrap up now because we've gone way over time. I would say with this book, we've been paid in advance. That's what happens with publishers. We get paid in advance. And I don't know if you know much about the publishing game. You don't make much money after that. There's no royalties. There's nothing. Every dollar we've made,
Unless you're Tim the Ponytail Winton.
Yes, unless you're him. But you should.
Here's a fucking Porsche.
You should support your local
Another
bookshop.
book.
You should support your local bookshop. You don't need to support us because we've already been paid. Better read than dead's outside. You might have a local bookshop down the street. So go there and pick it up for your uncle and your mother.
And you're going to be signing some books.
We will be somewhere around
straight
here.
after this.
But not Tim Winton's.
Not Tim Winton's.
We're signing our own.
If you bring Cloud Street anywhere near these boys, ooh.
But thank you for joining us tonight, Sydney, and good luck getting home on those cancelled ferries.
Thank you.